Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Johnson edition. We turned now to poem 720, No Prisoner Be. Now, in many ways, we're back to earlier studies. You guys will maybe remember when we did 613. They shut me up in prose as when a little girl they put me in the closet because they liked me still. Could themselves have peeped and seen my brain go round, they might as wise have lodged a bird for treason in the pound. Himself has but to will, and easy as a star, abolish his captivity and laugh. No more have I. And you'll maybe remember when we did 652, a prison gets to be a friend between its ponderous face and ours, a kinsmanship express, and in its narrow eyes we come to look with gratitude for the appointed beam it deal us, stated as our food and hungered for the same. We learn to know the planks that answer to our feet, so miserable a sound at first, nor ever now so sweet, as plashing in the pools when memory was a boy, but a demurer circuit, a geometric joy, the posture of the key that interrupt the day to our endeavor, not so real, the cheek of liberty. Concentrate on that word liberty for the study of 720. As this phantasm steal, whose features day and night are present to us as our own, and as escapeless quite, the narrow round, the stint, the slow exchange of hope for something passiver, content, too steep for looking up, the liberty we knew, avoided like a dream, too wide for any night but heaven, if that indeed redeem. Now, our assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side. Chats with Emily's our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 719 poems. We just finished with 719, A South Wind Has a Path. And if you've done that reading with us, then you know that to use this word pathos, there's a certain pathos that's in play in 720 as well. And I want you to be able to identify it. Now, we have already said that Emily is one of those amazing poets of psychology, and especially the notion of freedom. Now, there's been an attempt over the years to try and paint Emily as a Stoic, a follower of Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations, and Epictetus, of course, as well. But there is some truth to that. I want you to see that in a poem like this one. Again, I love the fact that Emily can say so much in 3 lines. When we get to poem 1063, ashes denote that fire was. We use that line often to point out that even though these are short poems, it tells us a whole lot was going on for Emily. She says it this way: No prisoner be, where liberty himself abide with thee. Now, this use of the word prisoner takes us again back to our study of 652. Notice the syntax here. No prisoner be. Emily, the great poet of captivity. Think about Emily, who herself has been called a recluse. We don't call her that, but certainly she cloisters herself away from much of the world, from much of her adult life. She is going to argue, you are not a prisoner if, or where, liberty himself abide with thee. Now, some have pointed out that liberty is capitalized, himself is capitalized, and so Emily is making a theological statement here that liberty himself is Jesus Christ himself. That is to say, this is a theological poem. In other words, as long as you have Jesus in your soul, in your heart, you are free, and you needn't worry about any prison, because you'll never be a prisoner. There is a second reading of this poem, and I'm going to leave it to you guys to decide, and it seems to be building on that line from Hamlet's Act 2, Scene 2, when you'll remember Hamlet is engaged in a conversation with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and he asks, what brings you to prison? Denmark is a prison. And they're like, what are you talking about? And what is it that Hamlet will say? There is nothing good or bad, but what thinking makes it so. We've given full lectures on that play at learnstrong.net if you want to run that to ground. The argument here that could be a second reading is that you're not a prisoner. You always have liberty if you are able to abide with yourself, to live with yourself. In other words, there's an understanding that one can gain liberty through one's mind. Now, when we get to poem 1587, we've read it a number of times already. We've shared it with you. Notice the use of the word liberty in this poem. He ate and drank the precious words. His spirit grew robust. He knew no more that he was poor, nor that his frame was dust. He danced along the dingy days, and this bequest of wings was but a book. What liberty a loosened spirit brings. I'll read the line again. What liberty a loosened spirit brings. And I think that's the point of this poem. I think Emily is arguing that we are as free as we allow ourselves to be, and our capacity, our attitude, our capacity of thought is what determines whether we are a prisoner or not. What is it that Marcus Aurelius says? One can be a good man even living in a palace. In Meditations, I think something very similar is being argued here. At 2b, I love how the syntax is reversed, and I love the two possible different meanings of this poem. At 3a, well, we mentioned the Hamlet 2:2. There's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. What is it that Milton will say in Paradise Lost, Book 1? The mind is its own place and can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. That is to say, how one thinks determines how one thinks about the notion of prison and freedom. Finally, at 3b, what was a time in your life when you were free because not of circumstances, but rather of your capacity to consider yourself to be free? I hope that Emily's challenging you. Thank you.